Hello, I'm Crickets, and welcome back to I Have a Story. Past week I've been talking about Make America Strong Again. I gave a video talking about how I had to be strong at work and just a few of the things I experienced at work that, well, I had to be strong enough not to sit there and cry and go back to work. I'm going to give an example today. Fast forward, I was 40, 41 years old, and a week before my daughter was born, I just got out of the hospital. My daughter was born April 14th, 2018, and I guess I have to back up and let you know how I got into the hospital. I started a business and was one of the most sought after in my field. I had a business that I'll talk more about because there's a lot of interesting stories to talk about with that job. But I couldn't get a job because of my disorders and my disabilities, and nobody would give me a job, and I have to survive somehow, so I started a business. Nobody can tell me when I work for myself that I'm a liability to their business. And that's what everybody says. You know, you fall down, you get hurt, you can't see, you go blind. Anything happens to you and you're working for us, it's our liability. Well, if I have my own business and I work for myself, I'm my own liability. So I started my own business. Again, be strong, people. I would have died in the gutters many times over throughout my life if I hadn't been strong. So in September of 2017, I got out of bed to go to work and get ready for my day, and I hit the floor and couldn't stand up. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't stand up. So my wife took me to the emergency room. This is another part of the reason I don't go to emergency rooms, because all they do is send you home. You're not dying. Go see your doctor. Problem is, I was dying. And when I went and saw my doctor, her diagnosis was, and I've talked about this, and this is in my medical reports, that I'm obese and overweight, and that's why I hit the floor and couldn't stand up at 210 pounds, 6 foot tall. And at that appointment, I lifted my shirt and said, "Ma'am, you show me anywhere you could pinch an inch." Well, according to the BMI chart, you're supposed to be 185 pounds and you're 210. That's obese and overweight. Even if I was not muscular, 210 pounds is not enough to make somebody fall down and not be able to stand up. Oh my God, how did she become a doctor again? Again, these doctors. That is what's in my medical report. That's what actually went into my first disability case, and my attorney for my first disability case went along with that, not my actual disabilities. Well, come to find out, I had a hole in my intestine that was leaking, and I was going septic. And the thing is, that wasn't even the worst of it. First week of January in 2018, I finally got to have surgery. Months later, September to January, I finally get under the knife on the table. And when they cut me open, they found out that my colon and my bladder were fused together. And it was almost to the point of fistulation. What fistulation means, you have two separate organs. They fuse together and they start to open up and become one. So my bladder and my stool, my urine and my stool would have just combined and that would become one organ. Surgery that was scheduled for an hour took 4.5. And afterwards, the surgeon he said, I almost threw in the towel because what's inside your body is so bad that we couldn't even work with it. And I woke up with an ileostomy, my intestines sticking out of my stomach. I'll spare you the pictures. And this is all, again, I have the pictures of I had to be strong enough to stick my finger inside my own intestines sticking out of my stomach. And talk about another time where most people would have woke up in a panicked state going, why is my intestine sticking out of my stomach? I had to keep it together, be strong, not knowing what's going on. And then even have the nurse who came in, as soon as I woke up from that surgery, hit me right on my open. I ended up getting that nurse thrown out, and that was not the only problem I had with her, and she did couple of things that really were damaging, and I called in, get her out of here. How, again, doctors, and how do we have these medical professions that don't have common sense? You don't walk in after a patient had surgery and pat them anywhere on their body. I don't know if she was on drugs. I don't know what her problem was. I've talked about nurses that I know as a fact doing cocaine, heroin, smoking weed, drunk, even to the point of falling down and not standing up, but yet they're in medical facilities working on patients. So was that her problem when she forgot to unhook my catheter and just sat there yanking and pulling and couldn't get it out? And then laughed, go, hee hee hee, oh, I forgot to unhook it. Well, that felt great. Get her out of here. So they couldn't fuse my colon and my intestine back together. They kept seeping and leaking, and that's why I had to have the ileostomy to give those time to heal. I also herniated my intestine because, again, you'll see what happened when I went home after the second surgery. I'll just keep these short. I could talk all day about the things I experienced and go through and all the details to it. I try to keep these short. So 2 months later, I got to get in and get my ileostomy reversed, and thank God it was reversible. I'm telling you, people, I never understood when my grandpa had his colostomy why he was so upset about it. After you have a bag of stool hanging from your stomach, you understand. Again, so much more I could talk about with that, and I even got a doctor fired over it, but stories for another day. My second surgery was a little over a week before, just over less than 2 weeks, a little over a week before my daughter was born. And I didn't know what day she was going to be born, but I knew my wife was at home pregnant with a 1-year-old and 3 teenagers. And she needed me. So after all of that, in my second surgery, when they put my colon and my bladder back together, removed a section of my intestine, or put my intestine and my colon back together, removed a section of my intestine, and did whatever they did through that surgery, I woke up as the nurse was rolling me into my room from the surgical room. She was bringing me into my patient room. And she told me things went good. We were able to reverse it, etc. Yay, I was so excited and happy. And it's like laying in bed in the middle of the night, rolling over and blowing open bags in the bed and having to wake your wife up covered in stool. So she rolls my bed into the room. We're in the bed station. And she goes around and she starts plugging in and hooking up my catheter and plugging in the monitors and stuff. And she tells me, on day 3, you have to be walking. It usually takes patients 3 days to start walking, and then on day 5, you get to go home. But the sooner you start walking, the sooner you get to go home. And I said, then what are you doing plugging in those monitors? What are you doing plugging in all that stuff? Unplug it and get me out of bed. Let's start walking. She thought I was joking, and I wasn't. And she looked at me and said, sir, you just woke up from surgery. You haven't even been awake for 2 minutes. You want to get out of bed and start walking right now? I said, will it hurt me? She said, I don't know. I've never had a patient get out of bed and start walking on the first day, let alone right when they wake up. I said, well, I want to go home. My wife's at home pregnant, and she needs me. I can't be laying here in a hospital bed. I got out of bed and started walking that very instant. She never even made it out from behind my bed and unplugged what she had already plugged in and got me down the hallway walking. Can you stand up? Yep, I got up. Well, if you can walk, let's do it. And as I went past even the nurse's station, all the nurses at the nurse's station, what is he doing out of bed? I'm going home. You can't go home. No, the sooner I get going, the sooner I go home. So I'm getting going so I can go home. My wife needs me. That's strength, people. That's the pain tolerance I have. I don't know that you could find anybody with a higher pain tolerance than me. I remember when we were selling our house, she bought this house that was horrid, horrible, tons of problems, tri-level house with no handrails, and we couldn't sell it because it wasn't within code. So one of the things I was doing after the surgeries and all this. This was a year later, 2 years later. I was cutting steel handrails to put up and had an extension cord going from inside through the sliding door and just had the door pushed shut. Well, the dog pushed the door open with her nose, and I'm running the saw, and I didn't even hear it. And she runs through the cord and dragged the saw right through my finger while it was running. Cut again my other finger down to the bone. That was on this hand. When I talked about driving a stake, that was this finger. Cut me straight to the bone, right on this finger. I go into the house. I'm like, it's the bone. I can see it. And kids are freaking out, screaming. She's dry heaving and gagging. I'm laughing. You guys, this is nothing. You need to go to the hospital. Get into. I'm not even going. Not going to the hospital. Grab me another rag and some duct tape. That's all I need. God, that to me is a paper cut, people. When you cut me to the bone, I've been hurt. You see all the. If you could see all the scars on my body, knew all that I've been through. Cutting me down to the bone is a paper cut for me. I don't even flinch over that. I laugh. I squeeze it and was making it look like a mouth opening up and closing, and I'm laughing and playing with it. That's the pain tolerance I have. The strength that I have. Oh, no. All right, well, I guess I got to get going here. Got to be strong, but sometimes you got to take a break. Oh, all right, well, so I got to go home and help take care of my wife. And when I started to say, when I talked about getting home and what I was able to do, the minute I walked in the front door after my surgery, I went straight out back and grabbed a bundle of firewood, brought it in, put it in the fireplace, and lit a fire. My son, my oldest son, my teenage boy, sitting there going, Dad, what are you doing? You just got out of the hospital. Why are you carrying wood? Let me get it. Nope, I got it. This was my job. It's part of how I covered the heat bill, was to keep our house warm, using wood and enjoying the smell of it. And there's still more stories to even talk about with that. So this is how I had to stay strong for my daughter, for my wife, when she was pregnant with my daughter, and be there when my daughter was born.